Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Dragon. I'm Snappy, and thank you for joining me for our evening adoration to the Muses. We gather with the sunset and cry out in loving adoration to the Great Mother, the twins, and the Muses, the one, duality, and generation. And we ask the Muses to sing in us the songs of inspiration, to guide us in our daily wanderings, and to teach us to listen and perceive with reasoned clarity. Thank you all for joining me, and now let us light our candles and begin our rites. Hail Hestia. All right. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's give a shout out here to the chat. Oh, oopsie. Sorry about that, folks. Dropping books. All right. And I needed that page. But we'll get there in a moment. All right. Let's give a shout out here to our chat. Good to see you, Honeybee. Much love. Mother Panda. Much love. Valdane, much love. D-Love, much love. Gandhi, much love. Kairos, much love. Metal Chaos, much love. Christy, much love. Scoby1, much love. Great to see you guys. Really great to see you. And I want to give you all a yo, Saturnalia. Tonight is the beginning of the Saturnalia festivities, the time in which we honor the great Saturn, his partner Ops, and the secret hidden nymph, Tacita Egeria. Really profound time. And it's a time for the flipping of poles, of transformation, right? Of inversions, and the freeing of that which is bound, right? Masters are made slaves and slaves are made masters. Now is a time for revelry, for gambling, for play, and for the giving of gifts. It's a magical, profound moment. All right. And let us read the Orphic hymn to Saturn and to Rhea. We begin with Saturn. Ethereal Father, mighty Titan, hear, great fire of gods and men whom all revere, endued with various counsel, pure and strong, to whom perfection and decrease belong. Consumed by thee, all forms that hourly die, by thee restored their former place supply. The world immense and everlasting chains, strong and ineffable, thy power contains. Father of vast eternity divine, almighty Saturn, various speeches thine. Blossom of earth and of the starry skies, husband of Rhea and Prometheus' wife. Obstetric nature, venerable root, from which the various forms of being shoot. No parts particular can thy power enclose, diffuse through all from which the world arose. O best of beings of a subtle mind, propitious here to holy prayers incline. The sacred rites benevolent attend, and grant a blameless life, a blessed end. Wow, how beautiful. And let's continue with the hymn to Rhea. Daughter of the great protagonist divine, illustrious Rhea, to my prayer incline, who drivest thy holy card with speed along, drawn by fierce lions, terrible and strong. Mother of Jove, whose mighty arm can wield the avenging bolt and shake the dreadful shield. Drum beating frantic of splendid mien, brass sounding honored, Saturn's blessed queen. Thou joyest in mountains and tumultuous fight, and mankind's horrid howlings thee delight. War's parent, mighty of majestic frame, deceitful savior, liberating dame. Mother of gods and men, from whom the earth and lofty heavens derive their glorious birth. The ethereal gales, the deeply spreading sea, goddess aerial formed, proceed from thee. Come, pleased with wanderings, blessed and divine, with peace attended on our labors shine. Bring rich abundance, and wherever found, drive dire disease to earth's remotest bound. Hail Rhea, Hail Saturn. Happy Saturnalia. Yo, Saturnalia. All right. How fun. And we continue. And I thought something that could be fun for our Saturnalia beginning here would be to read a few poems by the wonderful Clark Ashton Smith, who has several poems that are all about great Saturn. And we're going to begin with his first poem called Saturn, of course. Just give me 1 second here. I just got to sort these tabs out. And we're going to read a few different poems, all with this specific theme of Saturn. Okay. So let's see here. Bring that up. Oh, we got to. Okay. All right, we got it. Beautiful. So this first poem is called Saturn, Clark Ashton Smith. Now were the Titans gathered round their king in a waste region slipping towards the verge of drear extremities that clasp the world, a land half molded by the hasty gods, grotesque, misfeatured, blackly gnarled with stone, and left beneath the bright scorn of the stars, or worn and marred from conflict with the deep, conterminate of chaos. Here they stood, old Saturn midmost, like a central peak among the lesser mounts that guard its base. Defeat that gloamed within each countenance, like the first tinge of death upon a sun gathering like some dusk vapor, found them cold, heavy of limb, and halting as with weight of threatened worlds and trembling firmaments. A wind cried round them like a trumpet voice of phantom hosts, hurried, importunate, and interminate, with tightening fear. Far off the sunset sprang, and the hard clouds, molten among the peaks, seemed furnaces in which to make the fetters of the world. Seared by the lightning of the younger gods, they saw beyond the grim, crouching hills those levins thrust like spears into the heart of swollen clouds, or cleaving the dark sky like swords colossal. Then, as the Titans watched, the night rose like a black, enormous mist around them, wherein naught was visible, save the sharp levin leaping in the north. And no sound came except of seas remote that seemed like chaos ravening past the verge of all the world, fed with the crumbling coasts of matter. Till the moon, discovering that harsh swart wilderness of sand and stone, tissued and twisted in chaotic well, lit with illusory fire each Titan's form. They sate in silence, mute as stranded orbs, the rack of time upcast on ruinous coasts, and in the slow withdrawal of the tide, unvexed awhile. Small solace could they take from that wan radiance glistening frostily upon the desert seized in iron silence, like a false triumph over countless fates, or a mirage of life in wastes of death. Yet were they moved to speak, and Saturn's voice, seeming the soul of that tremendous land, set free in sound, startled the haughty stars. O Titans, gods, sustainers of the world, is this the end? Must earth go down to chaos, lacking our strength, beneath the unpracticed sway of godlings vain, precipitate with youth, who think, unrecking of disastrous chance, to bind their will as rains upon the sun, or stand as columns to the ponderous heavens? Must we behold with eyes of impotence that universal rack, even though it whelm these our usurpers in impartial doom beneath the shards and fragments of the world? Were it not preferable to return and, meeting them in fight unswervable, drag down the earth, ourselves and these our foes, one sacrifice unto the gods of chaos? Why should we stay and live the tragedy of power that survives its use? Now spake Enceladus, when that the echoings of Saturn's voice had fled remote, and seemed dead thunders caught and flung from star to star. Wouldst hurl thy kingdom down the nightward gulf, like to a stone a curious child might cast to test the fall of some dark precipice. Patience and caution should we take as mail, not rashness for a weapon, too keen sword that cuts the strained knot of destiny, never to be tied again. Were it not best to watch the slow procedure of the days, that we may grasp a time more opportune, when desperation is not all our strength, nor the foe newly filled with victory? Then may we hope to conquer back thy realm for thee, not for the gods of nothingness. He ceased, and after him no lesser god gave voice upon the shaken silences, none venturing to risk comparison, inevitable then, of eloquence with his, but like the ambiguity of signal stars and lesser overcast and merge in one confusion by the moon. Silence possessed that throng till Saturn rose. Around his form the light intensified and strengthened with addition wild and strange, investing him as with a ghostly robe and gathering like a crown about his brow. His sword, whereon the shadows lay like rust, he took, and dipping it within the moon, made clean its length of blade, and from it cast swift flickerings at the stars. And then his voice came like a torrent, and from out his eyes streamed wilder power that mingled with the sound. And his resurgent power, in glance and word, poured through the Titan's soul and was become the fountains of their own. And at his flame their fires relumed twice rebellious rose, leaping against the stronghold of the stars. And now they came where sleep, where red upon the forefront of the north, Arcturus was a beacon to the winds, and with the flickering winds that lightly struck the desert dust, then sprang again in air, they passed athwart the foreland of the north. Against their march, they say the shrunken waste, a riveled region, like a world grown old, whose sterile breast knew not the lips of life in all its epoch, or a world that was the nurse of infant death, ere he became too large, too strong for its restraining arms, and towered athwart the suns. And there they crossed metallic slopes that rang like monstrous shields under their tread, in duly clanging plains, like body mail of greater, vaster gods, where hills made gibbous shadows in the moon. They heard the eldritch laughters of the wind, seeming the mirth of doom, and near their gaze gaunt valleys deepened like an old despair. Yet strode they on through the moon's fantasies, bold with resolve across a land like doubt. And now they passed among huge mountain bulks, themselves like ambulant mountains, moving slow mid fettered brethren, adding weight and gloom to that mute conclave great against the stars. Emerging thence the Titans marched, where still their own portentous shadows went before, like night that fled but shrunk not, dusking all that desert way. And now they came where steep the sleep of weary victory had seized the younger gods as captives, borne beyond all flight of mounting battle ecstasies. And in that deep triumph of forgetfulness, upon that sleep the striding Titans broke, vague and immense, at first like forming dreams to those disturbed gods, in mist of drowse purblind and doubtful yet, though soon they knew their erst defeated foes, and rising stood in silent ranks expectant, that appeared to move with shaking of astonished fires that bristled forth deployed like awful plumes between the brightening desert and the sky. Then, sudden as the waking from a dream, the battle sprang, where striving deities moved brightly through the world and stricken air, sweeping it to a froth of fire, and all that ancient, deep established desert rocked, shaken as by an onset of the gulfs of gathered and impatient chaos, while above the place where central battle burned, the moon and stars drew back in dazzlement, paling to more secluded distances. Lo, where the moon's uncertain light had wrought disordered shadows and chimeras dim, hiding the hideous desert with mirage, or deepening it with gulfs and glooms of hell. Mightier confusion, chaos absolute, was grown the one thing sure in the sky or wood. Typhonian maelstroms, caught in fiery storms, torn by the sweep of Olympian weaponries, crescented blades that met with rounds of shields, grappling of shapes, seen through the riven blaze an instant, then once more obscure and known only by giant heavings of that war of furious gods and roused elements. These, round one swollen center, hung and sphered upon the blasted sand and molten rocks, so huge that chaos, complicate within with movements of gigantic legionry, where Jove and Saturn, thunder crested, led in onset, never stayed, so strong the strife of differing impulse, that decision found no foothold, till that first confusion should in ordered conflict rearrange and stand with its true forces known. This seemed remote, with that wide struggle pending terribly, as if the spectrum wings of time had made a truce with white eternity, and both stood watching from afar. Through drifts of haze, the broadening moon, made ominous with red, glared from the westering night. And now that war built for itself far up a cope of cloud, and drew it down far off upon all sides, impervious to the motion and sordid stars. And by their own wild light the gods fought on, neath that stupendous concave like a sky, filled and illumined with glare of shattered suns. And cast by their own light upon the sky, the gods' own shadow moved like shapen gloom, phantasmagoric, changed and amplified, a shifting frieze that flickered dreadfully in spectral battle indecisive. Then, swift as it begun, the contest turned, and on the heaving Titan's massive front, it seemed that all the motion and the strength, self-swording and confounded, of that strife was flung in centered impact terrible, with rush of all that fire, tempestuous, blown, as if before some wind of further space, striking the earth. Lo, all the Titans' flame bent back upon themselves, and they were hurled in vaster disarray, with vanguard piled on rear and center. Saturn could not stem the loosened torrents of long pent defeat. He with his hosts was but as drift thereon, borne wildly down the whelmed and reeling world. Hurling like slanted rain, the violet levin fell over that flight of Titans, and behind in striding menace all victorious Jove loomed like some craggy cloud with thunders crowned, and footed with the winds. In that defeat, with Jove's pursuit deepened and manifold, few found escape unscathed, and some went down like senile suns that grapple with the dark, and reel in flame tremendous, and are still. Ebbing, the battle left those elder gods thrown back on iron shores of their despair, a darker and a vaster Tartarus. The victor gods, their storms and thunder spent, went dwindling northward like embattled clouds. And where the lingering haze of light dissolved, the pallor of the dawn began to spread. On darkness purple like the pain of death, ringed with that desolate Saturn stood, mute. And the Titans answered unto him with brother silence. Motionless they appeared, some peristyle of topless columns great, all enduring of a fallen fane, in wastes of an immenser world whence life and faith have vanished, whose enshadowed orb verges oblivionward, and twilight slow crept round those lofty shapes august, and seemed such as might be the ghostly, muffled noon of mightier suns that tottered down to death. Then turned they, passing from that dismal place, blasted anew with battle ere the dawn, striding in flame athwart stupendous chasms, and wasteful plains should overtake them there, bowed with too heavy a burden of defeat. Slowly they turned and passed upon the west, where, like a weariness immovable and menace huge, the plain, its monstrous bulk, the peaks, its hydra heads, the whole world crouched against their march with the diminished stars. Wild, wild stuff. Wild energy in this one. One of the more beautiful poems by Clark Ashton Smith. Just amazing. Love it, love it, love it. We get such a wild poetic image of the battle of Saturn and Zeus, of the Titans and the Olympians. Just incredible. Let's continue. The next poem I'd like to read by Clark Ashton Smith is called In Saturn. In Saturn. Upon the seas of Saturn I have sailed to isles of high primeval amaranth, where the flame-tongued, sonorous flowers enchant the hanging surf to silence, all in grail. With ruby-colored pearls the golden shore allured me, but as one whom spells restrain for blind horizons of the somber main and harbors never known, my singing roar. I set forth rightly, formed of fire and brass, and arched with moons immenser heaven's deep were open, till above the darkling foam, with dome on cloudless adamantine dome, black peaks no peering seraph deems to pass, rose up from realms ineffable as sleep. Wow. The dark, drear, forgotten past, ineffable as sleep. Wow. Love it. We continue. We continue. The next poem I'd like to read for you is called The Isle of Saturn. Clark Ashton Smith. In one of these islands, the barbarians feign that Saturn is held prisoner by Zeus. Plutarch. Say, what seer, what poet has beheld Saturnia, Clio, or Euterpe? Tell, if this you know. Zones of guardian storm unslackening, sempiternal doldrums of the flat, untraversable foam drive the encroaching keels to leeward. So no sailor glimpses it, no chart includes. Never yet has man profaned it, never printed Xanic sands, where over duskier flames the blue, for tall marble cliffs whereon the hippogriffin rears his head and gazes seaward. Unalarmed, and all replete with grainy grasses, slant with wind, and drenched with spendthrift, walls of cypress closely ward on tended crops, where mellowed apples fall not from the bough to break the cyclic silence of a mighty myth that slumbers. There, in calamus and the lush hemlock matted, by the muffled windings of unmurmurous streams, black gigantic swans that winter in strange planets, age to age returning, make their nests and rear shadowy broods that no one numbers. There the dragon mother, crouched amid the boulders, high on rugged fells that rim the smooth main, hatches out her blotched and horny young, with folded wings that opened soon and fluttered, brief essays, tumbling on the downs and tors. Darkly in the gaunt and gleamless mountain sides, drowse the metals for the mail of gods reawakened, and the trees of savage forest holds on high, still unshapen halves of Titan battled maces, to be wielded in vast wars. Stretched between two peaks within a lee-wide valley, Saturn, slumbering, heals his wounds through halcyon cycles, rains and dews like balm anoint him. Wild grapes clamor over him with ripening clusters, and black ivy plates his golden beard uncombed. Others there are sleeping. Will they haply waken? Monstrous phantoms, striding down from fell and highland, crawling like to rivered lava through the dale beds. Gods who rose and reigned and died before the Titans, lying in topless tombs undomed. Who ruled before the Titans, right? Wow. Interesting stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good catch. And you will also see he connects both Saturn and Prometheus to Medea. Right? We're going to keep going. You're going to love this one. Saturnian. Saturnian by Clark Ashton Smith. Beneath the skies of Saturn, pale and many-mooned, her palace is, her wavering warded spires of celadon and rune, with names benign and mightier names of malefice, illume with saffron fairs, a marish by the black lethargic sea's lagoon. Her dragon-holden stairs go down in coiling jet and gold on some unplumed abyss. Long as leaping flame, exalted over ale, across the sun, her banners bear Adenic blooms armorial and beasts infernal on a field of Clitlaton. Amid her agate courts, like to a demon ichor, towering proud and tall, a scarlet fountain spurts to fall upon Pteries of dwale and deathly Hebenon. From out her amber windows gazing languidly on a weird land where conium and cannabis and upas tree seem wrought in verdigris against the copper sand, she sees and sees again a trailing salt like leprous dragons from the sea far crawled upon the fen, in foam of monster cloven gulfs beyond a fallow strand. Or, lurking from her turrets to south and north, she notes the gleam of mollied mountains and of rivers pouring forth, clear as the dawn, to fail in fluvius rill and stream. The widening waste amid, or swell the fallen meres abominable, swarth in green mirages hid, to the unquested grails of Bel, of death in deathful dream. Wow. Right? There's so much to this one. You need to go back, right? Because there's a lot of words and magical icons. You'll love this one, Gandhi, because he's using all of the magical stones to invoke the red goddess, you know? Love it, love it, love it. All right. And that ends our poetry for the evening. I hope you all enjoyed that. And thank you, Clark Ashton Smith. Hail Saturn. Yo, Saturnalia. Beautiful. All right. And we continue. We continue. We're now going to begin our divination proper. Okay. And let us begin with our Ganapati Oracle. And we invoke Ganapati Ganesh, the divine child, the Lord of beginnings, the guardian of the threshold, and the master of the spirits, the Ganas. And we ask Lord Ganapati to send us an inspiring message through the cards and to help ensure that our words are heard by those who need to hear them. So, Ganapati, what is today's inspiring message? All right, our center card is belonging. Belonging. Wow. Intense energy, right? Belonging. Struggling to come into flow, into harmony with the people around us. Being in that energy of the five, the power of Venus, the energy of initiation, of strife, right? That calls us to stand atop the four elements, to wield the elemental weapons, and to draw down the moon, to move beyond our limits, and to rise to the stars. Profound energy here, and the belonging is beautiful, right? Because it calls us into loving connection. I immediately think of the Five of Cups, disappointment. We find ourselves not in balance, not in harmony, and there's a need for more loving conversation, more engagement, more profound understanding, right? We see here this power of the four and of the one in order to take us to that five. And the 4 is the foundation, our core relationships, those people that we love the most, that stay with us through the changing of the cycles that we can depend upon. Those are the energies we must connect to, that we need to empower ourselves with. And then we see the magic of the 1, the power of Hermes, the magus in the tarot. And the 1 is the one who has gone through the cycles, balanced themselves in their will, and is able to empower themselves in action, to wield those elemental powers, to draw down the moon, to tell their story, right? And this is what we're seeing here. If we wish to tell this story of belonging, we have to cultivate those loving foundational relationships and see ourselves within them. That's the message. How beautiful. Be in that loving place. Go to your true love connections, right? Really embrace this profound moment. Beautiful. All right. Love it. Let's continue. We're now going to go to the Fairy Guardian Oracle. The Fairy Guardian Oracle. And we invoke the spirits, the fairies, the daimones, the manes, the lares, the genii, the penates, the seleni, the satyrs, the dryads, the naiads, the oreads, the nymphi, the nereids, the kurids, the coriobantes, the elves, and the gnomes. All the spirits of mind, of place, of the ancestors, of the elements, of the crossroads, and of the dead. We invite them all in and ask them to watch over our readings, to guide my hands and inspire. What is the message, spirits? All right, let's take a look. Celebration. Get ready to let your hair down and celebrate. It's time to go out and dance and play. An invitation could be on the way. Wow. We know that there's so much celebration happening at this time of year, for we are in the midst of the Saturnalia. We are in the midst of the holy season, right? Time for true transformation and of loving rebirth. In our tradition, on the 21st, at the height of the solstice, we have the Andronia, the Divalia, when we worship that great mother spirit, Akalarentia, the one who gave birth to the twins, to the Lares, and created the grand city. You know, profound energy here throughout the Saturnalia, right? Rebirth, reinvigoration, a return to a golden age, a return, a looking back to the past and a learning and a listening, a re-engaging, right? And when we bring this energy forward, we can utilize it to transform our future, right? Now's the time to really engage in that celebration, to connect to our loved ones and to embrace each other, to be at play, right? Really profound stuff. Really profound stuff. Love it. All right. How beautiful. All right. And now we're going to begin our tarot proper. But before I do, please give me a like and a subscribe. It really does make a big difference. It boosts everything in the algorithm. And I would truly, truly love and appreciate it. And if anyone is interested in me pulling them a few cards, please send me a super chat, super thanks, or sign up for a YouTube membership. All right. We're going to begin today with the Thoth Tarot by Lady Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. And we will start with a 9-card Saturn square reading. So remember, this is a community reading, so take what resonates, discard what does not, and trust your own personal intuition above all else. And let us invoke Apollo and the Muses and ask them to shine their light upon us, to guide us throughout our days, and to help us to realize the beauty of our dreams. So Apollo and the Muses, what is the empowering and inspiring message? All right, let's take a look. Inspire. All right, we have the 6 of Cups, pleasure. Oh, wait, what am I doing? We still want to keep this one, but I want to... Oh, gosh, a little bit tired this evening. Sorry, guys. All right, we have the 6 of Cups, pleasure, right? This is such glorious energy, right? The pleasure, this is being in that true loving reciprocal flow, being in loving harmony with the people around us, having ourselves fulfilled and fulfilling the other, being in that true communication, being in that true understanding, being in that loving reciprocity, right? This is the water in its most beautiful. This is the energy that can take us to the heights of ecstasy, right? This is profound love in its most balanced, its most understanding, and its most flowing. Really, really powerful energy here. And this is our center card. So this is what we're striving for. This is the energy we wish to bring in. Yeah, look at that. We find ourselves in the Knight of Swords, the Nine of Swords. The Nine of Swords is such intense energy, cruelty, the lashing out at the self, the lashing out at the world, right? We're in this deep victimization, this deep fearful energy, right? The Nine of the Swords represents overthinking at its absolute height, to the point where we have interpreted things in such a negative way. We have become the victim. We have lashed out, and we are preventing ourselves from being in this understanding, from being in this loving reciprocity, right? We have to come out of this energy and recognize that our overthinking, that our own frustrations, that our own victimization has led to us not being in that loving flow. If we could just step out of this energy, take it into the 10, right? The ruin energy, but understanding what led to this ruin, understanding how we can return back to the element, expand our perspective, and come into true loving connection. You know, how do we do that? We need to be able to approach this with honesty and positivity, right? We need to be able to close this energy out, gain that additional perspective. Oh, and look at that. We have the Five of Discs, worry. So that's the other side of it. Why are we struggling to come in to this energy of loving flow? There's a twofold here. You know, on one hand, we are in this deep, deep frustration. We are in this deep fear. We are in this deep victimization, right? We're interpreting everything in its worst possible mode. We are taking everything to heart. We are seeing the world and the universe as against us, right? And this is such negative energy that it's leading to our own ruination. And we have to recognize this and stop this now before we do hurt someone or destroy something, right? And on the other hand, we have the worry energy, right? The worry energy. The worry energy is intense, right? It's that 5 energy of Venus, that force that calls us into initiation, that calls us to expand beyond our limits, to stand atop the 4 elements and to reach for the stars, right? There's profound potential, profound striving, but there's also this incredible weight and realization of we're not in balance, right? And in the earth, this is real, right? We are not secure. We don't have the wealth and the means that we need, right? What's preventing us from coming into loving flow is that we're in this energy of struggle, struggling to come into success and balance, struggling to find that true empowered security that can sustain us. And as long as we are in that energy, we believe we can't be in this energy, you know? And so much of this energy is an outcome of this energy as well. It's the 9 of Swords is really, really preventing this from coming and forcing this to stay longer than it should. Let's continue. Wow, look at that. We have another 9. Now this is getting intense. We have the 9 of Wands. Strength, right? This is really powerful. The wands in their absolute height, that force that calls us to endure, to be our beautiful selves, to stand tall and confident in our being, and to persist, to do whatever it takes to be our true self, to manifest our will. This is the energy that says, I will endure, I shall overcome, right? We continue in spite of the intensity. And look, this is what it's telling you. In order to overcome that negativity, we have to think about, what do you truly want? What do you truly want? If you want that love, then you're going to have to face the worry and deal with it. You're going to have to face this energy of the 9 and deal with it. These are just realities that need to change, and you need to throw yourself into this action. Wow. That's heavy. The Eight of Cups, indolence, indolence. What's at the root of this too, or what this anxiety is causing? Another big problem here is that we find ourselves unable to come into the six, even as we're manifesting this loving energy in. Why? Because we are in this over abundance and over anxious energy of indolence. Indolence is where we find ourselves wanting and desiring to be in love, but then we are too anxious to actually commit, to put ourselves into contact and to engage. We see it here on full display. We see these cups flowing into one another, supporting each other, while all these other cups remain on the outside, barren and unfulfilled, right? We've called that energy to us. We want that love. We want to be in that balance, but you can't be in that balance if you're not sharing and loving reciprocity. You have to find a mutual flow that will work for that core foundational energy plus these others, right? Those friends and family, those partnerships, right? In order to come into that six, there's a lot here that needs to come into balance, right? And again, the reasoning is we're in that fearful energy. We're in that fearful energy. We're afraid to connect to people. We're afraid to put ourselves into that energy because we think it may cause issues. Wow. Let's continue. Two of discs change. Two of discs change. Yeah, look at that. In order to break free of this, we just need to really face the moment here and deal with this energy. We have to. Part of this Eight of Cups, right, is recognizing that if we don't break out of this indolent energy and come into loving connection and solve this, that things are going to get problematic. There's a reality here that we have to face. The Two of Discs is always calling us into harmony, calling us into action, into perpetual motion. If we don't act and move in the earth will crush us. This card demands you to face the earth and all of the harshness of its reality. Everything dances, nothing stands still. You have to adapt or maintain. And if you can't maintain or adapt, this card will squash you. It's just how it goes. And that's another reason why this kind of five energy is such a pain. It's such a struggle. We're facing the reality of not being in that balanced security. Wow. But ultimately, this is a trial and a tribulation. The wheel of fortune is turning. The cycles are turning. Things are coming to an end and are coming into a new beginning. This energy is all about rising to the moment, facing the intensity of the moment. If you can't really engage this energy, break free of the fear, struggle in the earth, you will come into loving flow. You will be rewarded. You will step outside of your limits and expand yourself. And that's what Fortuna demands. She puts us into these positions in order to break us out of the bad habits, in order to expand us, in order to force us to do something that we might find uncomfortable. But if you can make the uncomfortable comfortable, if you can make this energy work, if you can expand yourself, all of a sudden you'll be reaping the rewards of this. The wheel will turn in your favor. Wow. And look at that. We have two sixes. When we can really embrace the change in the earth and do the work that is necessary to come into success, we find ourselves coming into all of this loving communication, because the Six of Swords is that true empowered communication. We are now able to really listen and expand our perspective, to engage with the totality of humanity, to engage with the science and with the history, to understand consensus and utilize this information to truly inform us and to empower us. We are no longer limited by our individual perspective, but now we are informed by human understanding, empowered by great wisdom, right? This is profound energy. And that's what we need. In order to break free of the nine, you need to gain additional perspective, step outside of yourself, see that you're poisoning the well, that you're causing your own issues, right? See that you're not engaging, that you're not providing, right? The only way out of this energy is to gain the perspective, to come into loving connection. You're going to have to break these patterns, really push through it, do something about it. Yeah. Coming to loving connection indeed, right? You know, there's going to be a new opportunity, a new route in the water, something that's going to really empower, something that's going to lead us to this profound beauty and of the six, but even to greater heights still. For the ace implies the 9 and the 10, the height and the finishing, the completion of the cycle. And as such, in the water, this brings us happiness, right? And it brings us satisfaction, emotional fulfillment, true love, right? This is really, 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 really profound. But look, this opportunity, if we're going to seize that opportunity, you're going to have to break out of the 8 of Cups energy. As long as you're in this indolent energy, you're never going to fully connect and manifest that ace. You'll never come into the 6. Wow. This is a wild reading. It's all about facing and making the changes that are needed, empowering yourself and having that true desire to break free of negative thinking, of victimization, of isolation, and to rise to the moment, step outside yourself, do the hard work in the earth that will be needed to come into security and balance, that'll make this a possibility, and look for these new opportunities, these new connections. And look at all of this through that lens of understanding and wisdom. We have to always be trying to expand our perspective, to see outside of our limited point of view, especially when we're dealing with these kind of emotional issues, right? Especially when we find ourselves in the heights of fear, right? We have to always ask, is this the rational thing? Am I, you know, am I the one who is making things far worse? How do I break free out of this negativity? You know, otherwise violence gets committed, you know? It's rather intense. Wow. Yeah, what a powerful reading, guys. You know, come into that loving connection, break free of these bad habits, you know, accept the changes that are needed, empower yourself in your will, and future Fortuna will reward. All right, that's the message. I hope that resonated with you. It certainly resonated with me. How beautiful. Okay. And with that, we continue. All right. If anyone else would like me to pull them a couple cards, please send me a super chat, a super thanks, or sign up for a YouTube membership. And once again, yo, Saturnalia. All right. And for our next read, I think we're going to go to the Rider Waite Smith Tarot, the most popular tarot deck of all time, by Pamela Coleman Smith and A.E. Waite. And once again, this is going to be a 9-card Saturn Square reading. So take what resonates, discard what doesn't, and trust your personal intuition above all else. And we invoke Apollo and the Muses and ask them to shine their light upon us, to guide us throughout our days, and to help us to realize the beauty of our dreams. So Apollo and the Muses, what is the empowering and inspiring message from Pamela Coleman Smith, A.E. Waite, and the Rider Waite Tarot? Take a look. All right, our center card in defining image is the Hangman. The Hangman, the primordial elemental water, the 12, right, which takes us to the magic of the 3, the power of the great mother. This energy is always about facing our fears, trusting our intuitions, and making the sacrifices, the changes that are needed to break bad habits and to come into new empowered flow, right? We have to recognize that we are holding ourselves back, and that if we don't do something about this, there's going to be a profound, painful transformation. You know, we need to really do what is necessary to overcome, flip our perspective, gaze into that abyss, face our fears with love and honesty, and do what we have to do to overcome them. Break free of bad actions, take discipline, responsibility, empower yourself in your life in order to come into flow. Wow, wow, wow. And look at that. We have the 2 of Wands called out. The 2 of Wands is dominion, power, right? The magic of Heracles, the strength of Heracles. When we have this energy of the 2 of Wands, we are called to recognize a profound ability, a profound passion. We can do this. We have all of the will, all of the desire. We can push through the waters and face our fear and break this moment. We just have to believe in ourselves and recognize the weight of the energy that we hold, right? This energy can dominate others, it can empower the self, it can do just about anything. And if we are held back in this moment or held back in this moment, it is because we are not empowering ourselves. We are not embracing our true strength. Wow. The Knight of Swords. How interesting. The Knight of Swords is the fire of air, the mature person who's out to pursue, real communication. They wish to be understood and they wish to understand, right? They seek wisdom and knowledge and they want to prove to the world that they really understand things, right? They seek to come into justice and harmony and they want to explain themselves. Profound, beautiful energy. But we're seeing them here, right? Struggle in the water. And this is out of their purview. This is something that they normally don't do. They avoid that energy of the water. They're more about the air. They seek that glory of the struggle to understand. They wish to write the essays, But here they're being forced into this energy of the water. They're being forced to take account, to take responsibility, to recognize that they're not in flow. And the Muse is saying, in spite of the waters, in spite of its perceived difficulty, in spite that it's out of the knight's purview, it's well within his means. These things are only just fears. He's trying to run away, right? He's facing the opposite direction. He's trying to run away from this energy of the hangman, from having to change and take responsibility, even though he's definitely capable of change and responsibility. Wow. And we have the 9, the Hermit. Wow, the Virgo. In order to get into this energy of coming into harmony, what does it need? It needs us to be in that true disciplined action, taking responsibility. The 9, the Hermit, the Virgo, this is Psyche, right? The one who does the hard work, who passes through the trials and the tribulations, who faces the queen of the underworld and rises to the heights of the stars to be with her lover Eros, right? This is the path that we all must walk. We all must struggle that long and lonesome journey, take responsibility, do the disciplined work, right? And this is about us taking responsibility and making the changes that are needed, right? The prince needs to recognize their power and they need to take responsibility. Wow. And we have the 6 of Swords, science and intellect, right? Coming into true empowered understanding by expanding one's perspective and listening to that greater human perspective. Learning from the history, from the science, right? Really powerful energy, reason energy. And when we have science and reason here, we can really, this is the thing. We have all of this profound ability coming into the hangman. We just need to do it. We just need to actually make the changes that are necessary. Wow. And we have the 9 of discs gain. Wow, look, when we can really take charge, make the changes that are needed, come into the earth, embrace our true power and understanding, right? Listen to the people around us. We can come into the true power of the earth, wealth and abundance. Wealth and abundance. Really, really powerful stuff, The 9 of the discs is the earth at its most abundant and fruitive. This is wealth that keeps amassing for us. We are in that generative growth. Really powerful stuff here. Wow. And look at that. We have the 6 of Cups. Beautiful. Loving reciprocity, pleasure, the heights of ecstasy. Again, we're seeing this, not recognizing if we can make the sacrifices and the changes that are necessary, if we can discipline ourselves, we can come into that true loving flow. We can be in this beautiful energy. We can be in this beautiful energy. This is where we are working towards. This is what the hangman offers. He offers you that true love, mutual reciprocity, being completely fulfilled as you fulfill others, right? Wild stuff. The Page of Pentacles, and look, that loving ecstasy will give birth to a divine child, a new profound life, new opportunities, new beginnings, new creation that exists on its own, right? And this is the earth of earth, the princess in the earth, the one who is that true empowered craftsman who comes to build and transform. Look, we're giving birth to something that is really going to be truly empowered, right? Something that's going to manifest all this incredible wealth that's going to be born out of this love. We just need to be willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary and take responsibility, empower ourselves in our will. Yeah. And go to the root of the element. You know, not only do we need to recognize our power, we need to go to the root of the element and ask ourselves, what do we truly want? What do we truly desire? And are you not willing to fight for it? Right? What is that passion, that spark? You know? And we're recognizing that it's in the waters, even though this person finds himself in the air. And there needs to be a profound shift. But that's what we're doing, right? We're taking responsibility for that child. We're building in the earth. Powerful stuff. Powerful, powerful stuff. Wow. Beautiful. Absolutely love it. All right, guys. I hope that resonated with you. It certainly resonated with me. And once again, if anyone wants me to pull them a couple cards, please send me a super chat, a super thanks, or sign up for a YouTube membership. And we're not going to be going too late this evening. I'm planning on taking it a little bit early. So I think I am going to hop over to the sortes. But if anyone gives donations, we'll do some more beautiful tarot. So I thank you guys all for being here on the wonderful Saturnalia. But I have to go do my prayers, right? Okay, so let's see. We're going to begin our sortes with Aeschylus, the Oresteia trilogy, the Oresteia. Okay, and Muses, what is the inspiring message from Aeschylus and the Oresteia? Let's see. The ancient curse thus for the third time brings a hurricane's havoc on this house of kings. Now its destruction done, the tempest's course is run. Wow. Ancient curses and ancient violence. You know, this is such a theme. What happens to poor house Atreus, right? The house of Atreus, the Atreides, you know? This is a wild line. Interesting. We continue. Next up, we're going to go to Of Cosmogonic Eros by Ludwig Klages. Muses, what is the message from Klages? Inspire. In this respect, erotic ecstasy consists of a union that takes place internal to the individual, or as Klages put it, the gamos of erotic ecstasy is an inner gamos, or a self-copulation of a being extended into the world, thus generating and receiving, and hence pregnant. In the language of myth, such a gamos consists of the fertilized egg and the god that hatches from it, embrace, pregnancy, and birth. In the language of pathology, it involves not just idiopathic but sympathetic aspects. This distinction, was introduced in the second edition of Cosmogonic Eros. Klages explains. Wow. Interesting stuff, right? That there's this inner gamos that leads to an outer understanding, right? Beautiful. We continue. We're going to go now to Thomas More, Complete Poetical Works. Muses, what's the message from More? Inspire. They tell how Attis, wild with love, roams the mount and haunted grove. Sibley's name he howls around, the gloomy blast returns the sound. Off too by Clarus's hallowed spring, the votaries of the laureled king quaff the inspiring magic stream and rave in wild and prophetic dream. But frenzied dreams are not for me. Great Bacchus is my deity, full of mirth and full of hymn, while waves of perfume round me swim, while flavored bows are full supplied, and you sit blushing by my side. I will be mad and raving too, mad, my girl, with love for you. Bacchus and adoration of Venus. Hail Bacchus, hail Attis, hail Cybele. Love it, love it, love it. That was beautiful. All right. And we continue. We're going to go now to Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Inspire. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. Don't spoil the moon's fun there, son. The moon needs her time too. Wow. Paradise lost and paradise regained. Muses, what is the message for Milton? Return from Babylon by leave of kings, their lords, whom God disposed, the house of God they first re-edify. For a while in mean estate live moderate, till grown in wealth and multitude, facetious they grow, but first among the priests dissension springs, men who attend the altar and should most endeavor for peace. Their strife pollution brings upon the temple itself, and at last they sieve the scepter, and regard not David's son, and then loose it upon the stranger. Wow. And even Milton understood this wild cycle that happens, right? Decadence comes in and we consume our brothers, right? We consume our children. We consume and destroy the stranger. We see this reflected in the story of Saturn himself. We see this reflected in Dionysus and the Bacchae, right? And this is a continuous theme. We see this in our present worlds. What is the sign of the collapse of empire but the attack of the stranger? Nothing more needs to be said there. And with that, I think we're going to call it. All right. Oops. Let's see here. Where did I put that book? Oh, it doesn't matter. All right. And with that, yeah, we're going to call it here. So I thank you guys all for joining me. Happy Saturnalia. And I hope you guys take this time to go out and cry out in loving adoration under the stars, right? Honor the ancestors, honor the divine, and honor that profound force of time. All right. And with that, let us say our prayer. We cry out in loving adoration to the great mother, the twins, and the muses, the one, duality, and generation. And we ask the muses to sing in us the songs of inspiration, to guide us in our daily wanderings, and to teach us to listen and perceive with reasoned clarity. Thank you all for joining me. Peace and love, and take care. Let's now blow out our candles and end our rites. Yo, Saturnalia! Hail Hestia!